Cenat, Streamer University.
You guys can achieve anything that you guys want. Don't limit yourself to one category. For the past year, I've had dreams besides streaming to achieve and to pursue. I have dreams one day to become a fashion designer and start my own clothing brand. And one thing I want to say is, no matter what, keep God in everything that you do. Do not ever forget about God at all. And I would love to end this with a quote that my good friend always says, and that's, everybody preaches to everybody, be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. But as soon as people get on the internet, they tell you how to be. Thank you.
What happens when you reach the absolute top and realize there's nowhere left to go? Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. When you've broken every record, when you've had every celebrity walk through your room, when you've turned chaos into a formula that prints money, most people would stay right there. Repeat the same thing. Milk it until the audience gets bored. But Kai Cenat didn't do that. Instead, he did something that confused, annoyed, and straight up irritated a massive part of the internet. He stepped away, not because streaming stopped working, but because it worked too well.
I feel like sometimes people need to self-reflect and take a step back from the broad perspective of what their life has been. I believe that there is more to this world that is much greater than myself. The energy and passion to want to do more and create is within me. That is why I quit.
And that's where this entire situation actually begins. Because this story is not about fashion. It's not about reading books on camera. It's not about a notebook, Paris Fashion Week, or people yelling, "This is performative." This is about what happens after you peak, and what it costs to refuse becoming a parody of your own success. A few months ago, Kai Cenat stood at a level no streamer in history had ever reached. A marathon subathon, record-breaking numbers, global attention, a cultural moment that won't be replicated anytime soon. That should have been the victory lap. But instead, it became the exit ramp. Almost immediately after, things started to change. The energy shifted, the tone changed, the content slowed down. And then came the announcement that sent people spiraling. Kai was quitting streaming. Not fully, not forever. But enough to make people panic. Because when the biggest streamer in the world even hints at stepping away, it forces an uncomfortable question. Why would someone leave the easiest money they'll ever make? That's where the internet split in half. One side said this was growth, maturity, a young guy realizing there's more to life than numbers. The other side said this was fake, performative, a rich kid playing self-improvement cosplay for attention. And on the surface, I get why it looks that way. A notebook always ready for the camera. Reading sessions posted online, fashion sketches treated like sacred artifacts. If anyone else did this, they'd be clowned instantly. But Kai isn't just anyone. And that context matters more than people want to admit. Kai didn't start this shift from a position of failure. He didn't pivot because he was falling off. He pivoted from total dominance. That's a completely different psychological space. When you're climbing, every improvement feels exciting. When you're at the top, every repetition feels empty. Streaming is a machine that rewards constant presence, noise, speed, escalation. Once you raise the bar high enough, you can't lower it without the internet calling it decline. And Kai raised the bar higher than anyone. After you've had LeBron James on your stream, after you've pulled numbers that rewrite platform history, what does a normal stream even look like? It doesn't. Anything smaller feels like regression, even if it's intentional. That's the trap Kai walked into. And instead of pretending that trap didn't exist, he chose to walk out of it. That decision alone guaranteed backlash. Because the internet hates one thing more than failure: abandonment. A lot of the anger directed at Kai isn't really about fashion or reading. It's about loss. People feel like the version of Kai they grew up watching is being taken away. And when creators change, audiences don't just feel surprised, they feel rejected. As if the creator is saying, "I don't need you the same way anymore." That feeling turns into mockery. Performative. Fake growth. cosplaying intelligence. But here's the part most people ignore. If this was just content, if this was just a phase, if this was just engagement farming, Kai would have stopped the moment the jokes got loud. Performative growth collapses under pressure. Real change doesn't. And the pressure hasn't slowed him down at all. In fact, he's leaned into it, which brings us to the part everyone keeps missing. Kai didn't choose an easy rebrand. He didn't pivot into movies. He didn't become a podcast host. And he didn't move into something adjacent where fame does all the work. He chose fashion, an industry that does not care about streaming numbers. An industry that eats influencers alive. An industry that humiliates outsiders before it respects them. That's not a safe move. That's not a smart PR play. That's a risk. And people who are faking growth don't take risks that can permanently damage their image. They take safe ones. Kai didn't. And that's why this situation feels so uncomfortable to watch. Because for the first time, Kai Cenat is operating in a space where he isn't automatically dominant. And the internet doesn't know how to process that. The word everyone keeps throwing at Kai is performative. And on paper it sounds convincing. Posting self-improvement online, documenting growth, letting the camera see moments that used to stay private. That's usually a red flag. But context matters. Because performance isn't defined by visibility. It's defined by intent. Performative growth exists to impress the audience. Real growth exists even when the audience turns hostile. And the moment Kai's shift stopped being universally praised, the internet expected him to retreat. He didn't. That alone changes the entire equation. Because if this was just branding, he would have course-corrected instantly. He would have made a joke out of it. He would have leaned back into chaos. That's what the algorithm rewards. Instead, he doubled down, which tells you this wasn't designed to be comfortable. One of the biggest misconceptions people have is assuming Kai quit streaming because he was bored. That's not what burnout looks like. Burnout doesn't come from boredom. It comes from success without meaning. When your entire identity becomes output, you stop knowing who you are without it. Kai has talked openly about that emptiness, about making money, spending money, and realizing that none of it actually filled the gap.
Oh, shit. Niggas is in Paris. Niggas is in Paris.
And that's where this pivot becomes dangerous. Not for his career, but for his audience. Because when a creator stops feeding the version of themselves people are addicted to, the withdrawal gets ugly. Streaming thrives on parasocial access. The illusion that the creator belongs to the audience. Rebrands break that illusion. They remind people that creators are autonomous, and autonomy feels like betrayal to viewers who built emotional attachment. That's why the response feels so personal. Not disappointed, not confused, angry. The notebook became a meme because it symbolized separation. It wasn't about what was written inside it. It was about what it represented. Kai building something that wasn't immediately consumable. And that's a threat to an audience trained on instant gratification. But here's the harsh reality the internet doesn't want to accept. Kai Cenat doesn't owe anyone permanence. He already gave the platform everything it asked for. Energy, chaos, moments, and history. Staying would have been easy. Leaving is expensive. And that's where fashion comes back into the conversation. Fashion is brutal. There are no participation trophies, no sympathy for outsiders, no patience for people who think influence equals skill. This is an industry where even cultural icons had to be humbled. So when Kai walks into that space with cameras following him, skepticism is guaranteed. And honestly, some of it is deserved. Not because he shouldn't try, but because the industry demands proof, not potential. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Kai knows that. That's why he didn't launch the brand overnight. That's why he didn't skip steps, and that's why he's documenting process instead of just product. People assume that means he's cosplaying artistry, but it might mean something else entirely. It might mean he's finally doing something where he can't fake competence. In streaming, charisma carries you. In fashion, it doesn't. You either learn or you get exposed. That's not a playground for someone who just wants applause. That's a classroom. And classrooms are uncomfortable, especially when millions are watching. That's why so many people project their own fear onto Kai. Because trying something new publicly is terrifying. Failing publicly is worse. And Kai has chosen a path where both are possible. The irony is that the same people calling this rebrand fake would be the first ones to mock him if he stayed exactly the same for another 5 years. Creators aren't allowed to stagnate, but they're punished for evolving. It's a lose-lose dynamic, and Kai seems fully aware of it. That's what separates this from a phase. He's not asking to be understood. He's not begging for validation. He's moving forward regardless of reaction. Which brings us to the part nobody wants to say out loud. This rebrand isn't about success, and it's about survival. Not financial survival, like identity survival, because staying the biggest streamer forever would eventually turn Kai into a caricature of himself. And some creators choose that route. They let the audience trap them in an era. They become prisoners of nostalgia. Kai refused, and refusal always looks ugly in real time. Only later does it get reframed as foresight. So here's the uncomfortable question this entire situation forces. What if this isn't Kai pretending to be someone else? What if this is Kai trying to figure out who he is without the noise? That's not inspiring, that's not cool, that's not aesthetic, it's messy. And mess doesn't perform well online. But real transformation never does. If this fails, Kai will be clowned relentlessly. If it succeeds, people will pretend they saw it coming. That's how the internet works. But regardless of outcome, one thing is already locked in. Kai Cenat is no longer playing it safe. He's no longer optimizing purely for approval. He's no longer living inside a format that demands constant escalation. He stepped off the track. And once you do that, there's no going back. So whether you think this is delusion, ego, or evolution, you can't deny the risk. And people who are faking growth never choose the option that risks turning them into a punchline. They choose comfort. They choose repetition. They choose what already works. Kai didn't, and maybe that scares people more than they are willing to admit. Because if the biggest streamer in the world can walk away from the crown, it forces everyone else to ask a question they don't want to answer. What happens when success stops being enough? And what are you willing to lose to become something else?